Hello and welcome to Ukraine in Flames, a special project by Ukraine Crisis Media-Center, NGO Euro-Atlantic Course and Analytical Center of Ukrainian Catholic University. My name is Victoria Zabian. I'm head of the UCMC Press Center. Please like, share this video and subscribe our channel to stay tuned. The current Russian-Ukrainian war has already led to unprecedented destruction of settlements and civilian objects. They have reached the scale that the European continent has not remembered since World War II. There are some depressing cases of deliberate acts of humanitarian terrorism when the enemy attacks elevators and pig farms. It is believed that the Putin regime has an intention to provoke a famine in entire regions. Reconstruction of Ukraine, according to the most modest estimates, will cost hundreds of billions of dollars, and we need the help of Western countries. Reconstruction of Ukraine, desires and opportunities is the topic for today. And we start with the inspiring and powerful message from Natalia Yaresko, former Minister for Finance of Ukraine, who says that talking about reconstruction of Ukraine, first of all, Ukrainian government and Ukrainian people need to have a strong vision of how all the infrastructure can be not only renewed, but improved. Let's take a look.
Once Ukraine wins this war, once Ukraine prevails, we need to look to rebuilding, renewing, and revitalizing Ukraine. The destruction, the devastation have been horrific. But we can use this as an opportunity to renew and revitalize Ukraine. There are three major elements in my mind. First, what is our vision for this renewed, revitalized Ukraine? How do we build an even better Ukraine? How do we use the expertise, the knowledge, the technology of the 21st century to build Ukraine that is energy efficient, green, community friendly? We inherited Soviet architecture, communities not built for individuals. We inherited Soviet residential buildings with horrible energy inefficiency. We inherited Soviet factories that allow for emissions that destroy our climate. We can rebuild, renew, and revitalize with a vision to a green Ukraine, to a Ukraine that is friendly to the individual, to families, to communities, friendly to electric vehicles and biking and gardens, friendly to architecture that is the most energy efficient in the world. We can rebuild, renew with a vision of a revitalized Ukraine, deserving of the people of Ukraine. Second big element is the source of capital for this renewal, revitalization. And that's going to have at least three elements in my mind. First, we need to ensure that as much as possible of the frozen assets of the Central Bank of Russia, oligarchs, and other sanctioned entities are turned over to Ukraine for the rebuilding. These frozen assets, depending on the jurisdiction in which they were frozen, need to have legislation to enable those frozen assets to be turned over to Ukraine. Russia and Russian forces and Putin have caused this devastation, and they need to be the core component of rebuilding and renewing Ukraine. In addition to those frozen assets, we need to look to get reparations on an ongoing basis from Russia, whether that's a tax on oil and gas or other commodities, but we need to have ongoing reparations. That's one of the three elements of the source of capital for rebuilding Ukraine. The second is, of course, our partners, our G20 partners, our international institutions, the IMF, the World Bank, the EBRD, the EIB. All of them need to come forward to help us rebuild an economy that's not just good for Ukraine, but good globally, an economy that is integrated into the European Union as a member, into the global trading community. And as much of this money as possible needs to be in the form of grants at a maximum concessional loans. The third component of the capital is the private sector. We need to do everything possible to ensure, engage, and accelerate investment from the private sector, public-private partnerships, P3s, and other into the Ukrainian economy. It is clear there is no role, there is no place for Western businesses in Russia. Ukraine is the absolute base for integration with Europe and the rest of the global economy. So we have a vision, we have capital. The third thing we'll need to do to make sure this rebuild is successful is provide confidence-building measures to the people of Ukraine, as well as the donors to Ukraine. Confidence-building measures can be a variety of things, but I would focus on a very transparent procurement system. A procurement system that provides everyone with the confidence that the monies are used efficiently, rapidly, well, for the purposes necessary. The people of Ukraine want to know that those monies are being used well, and the donors want to know. My recommendation would be a separate agency with an agreed procurement process, with regular monthly, quarterly, annual reports and audits. Other confidence building measures, I believe, need to be put in place for the private sector. From the donor side, that could mean political risk insurance to provide for more security for private investors. From the Ukrainian side, more confidence in the rule of law. For example, the precedent that's been established in other parts of Europe, mentioned by Swedish economist Anders Åslund, a court based on Ukrainian law, using foreign judges, that would assure private investors immediately that rule of law was in place. That's not to say that judicial reform shouldn't continue, but that's a process that'll take time. Urgently, we need to do something to provide the private sector with those confidence-building measures they need to come back and help us build, rebuild, renew, and revitalize Ukraine. So one, a vision of the 21st century Ukraine that we want to build, that we want and that we deserve, and that the Ukrainian people deserve after all of this horrific war. Two, sources of capital based on Russian frozen assets and reparations, but complemented by bilateral, international, and private sector funding. And third, confidence-building measures to assure both the people of Ukraine and the donors that this process is delivering what was meant to be. Thank you.
Yuri Hanushchak, expert on decentralization and local government, said that despite the fact that the war is continuing, it is already time to think about how our society and authorities see the reconstruction of Ukraine. Moreover, during the process of reconstruction and cooperation with Western partners, Ukraine will implement European practices and speed up its integration to European Union.
Despite the war with Russia is still ongoing and nobody knows when it will end, it is already necessary to prepare plans for both rebuilding the country and foresight its further development. Now, for Ukrainian society, it became clear that Russia is an eternal and lifelong enemy and will finally cease to be one only when it shrinks to the size of the Moscow Kingdom of the 17th century before the annexation of Ukrainian lands, and its democratization within the existing borders is fundamentally impossible due to the explosive mixture of natural resources, horde despotism, and orthodoxy. This defines a completely new paradigm of further development of Ukraine, which is based on its boundary of mental Europe. There is a high risk of a recurrence of aggression from Russia when it regains its force. This determines the strategy of locating infrastructure and business in Ukraine, given its vulnerability, cost of investment, mobility, level of technology. The main condition to be taken into account is to estimate the risks of impact and losses of the national economy from the destruction of engineering, social, and housing infrastructure, reduction of human potential due to aggression. So, it's reasonable to divide the territory of Ukraine into zones with high, medium, and low risk of threat. Of course, due to the danger of being hit by Russian missiles, there are no absolutely safe territories in Ukraine. However, in the event of full-scale aggression, the western regions may still be seen as relatively safe. This is where the evacuation of the population should take place, while areas that may be attacked directly by enemy long-range artillery are considered as potential front line. It is from these territories based off the experience of the current war that the evacuation of the population should be carried out. Central regions, which have a medium level of risk, will have a mission to ensure the supply of ammunition and proviant for the needs of the armed forces of Ukraine. The evacuation of people and business from this area might be voluntary. The law should determine the specifics of economic activity in each zone. Of course, the decision to provide a business is made directly by entrepreneur, but public authorities may have certain tools to influence on such decisions in order to minimize risks for both business and population. The business insurance mechanism looks attractive in the areas with a high risk. It is also advisable to encourage introduction of mobile business or low capitalization or low value added. Restrictions on risk zones should be taken into account when rebuilding the national economy in the liberated territories. The road network should first be restored in the medium risk zone. Projects to restore industrial and social infrastructure in areas that looked depressed before the war and will continue to be at high risk zone should also be carefully investigated. An important issue is the inventory of war damage. Given the high corruption risks, it is necessary to determine not only the procedure for such loss and assessment, but also the condition and procedure for verifying such assessments. In the social sphere, priority should be given to the communities which are most interested in their recovery. At the same time, verification should be entrusted to district state administration, which are the most protected from political influences. Finally, the issue of financing the country's reconstruction is important. Obviously, the main sources will be the EU, USA, and other international financial organizations. But the mechanism for spending funds may be different. The practice of strict project support is unacceptable, as is the case today with a number of donors projects. For example, consulting services from foreign experts consumes the major share of the project funds, and all procedure look to be very long time. On the other hand, the hope that donors will simply donate money, turning a blind eye to the restoration of the corruption scams common in Ukraine, is also unacceptable. And here, perhaps, will be a key post-war exam for the Ukrainian state. Given the perspectives of European integration, Ukraine must already master the methodologies of program and project planning used in EU. And this will be an example of the best performance of Ukraine's homework needed to join the European Union.
Igor Korchovy, Deputy Minister for Communities and Territories Development of Ukraine on European integration, underlines that what is going on in Ukraine is the biggest disaster since World War II, and the whole world, and especially our Western partners, must stand with Ukraine and support Ukraine as the country which defends the future of Europe.
Hello, dear colleagues. My name is Igor. I'm the Deputy Minister at the Ministry for Communities and Territories Development of Ukraine. In this tough moment, I'm very proud that I'm serving my country, my people, and I'm very proud that our nation is combating for its European future. We met the huge disasters, the biggest catastrophe since the Second World War on the European continent. More than 5 million Ukrainians migrated abroad. Around 7 million of our citizens are internally displaced. Today, more than 80,000 of residential buildings are destroyed. And that is not the stop of this war. The thousands of kilometers of roads, hundreds of thousands of people have no access to the basic services as drinking water. Right now, our people and our country are struggling for its better future. We are consolidated. We believe in our military forces. And the government and the public service is doing its job. And we deserve to be a part of the European family. We deserve to be an integral part of the European future. And our investment into this future is bigger than you can even imagine, because it washed with the blood of our people. So we ask you to stand with Ukraine, to support us in any way that you can do, by supporting with the financial resources, even with the solidarity issues. Stay strong and believe in Ukraine.
Prominent Ukrainian experts already think about the exact steps that should be made in order to make reconstruction efficient. One of them is Anatoly Tkachuk. Let's listen to his points.
Нам потрібно зрозуміти, як кваліфікувати чи класифікувати території, які були сильно уражені російськими окупантами. Як на мене, треба визначити такий певний статус уражених територій, як колись було це після Чорнобиля, там першої, другої, третьої категорії. Певні кваліфікаційні ознаки визначають, скільки інфраструктури, житлової сфери було зруйновано в цих регіонах, скільки населення втратили ці території. І відповідно щодо таких територій мають готуватися такі плани відновлення. І отут ще одна дуже важлива річ, яким чином планувати це відновлення. Як на мене, ми повинні розуміти, що є ключові такі точки, ключові міста, які тримають Україну разом. В першу чергу це Київ. Це Київ, столиця, безумовний лідер серед українських міст і регіонів. Саме тут концентруються основні капітали, основна кваліфікована робоча сила. І це такий символ української держави. В нас на сході таким центром є Харків, на заході Львів, в центрі Дніпро, на півдні Одеса. Тому відновлення України має передбачати в першу чергу відновлення цієї Таврової балки із цих міст, які фактично тримають Україну разом. Використовуючи час на відновлення, ми не просто мусимо відновити уражені території, ми маємо зробити все для того, щоб ці території швидко включилися в регіональну загальноукраїнську економіку, а всі ми, хто будуть задіяні до підготовки відновлення і самого відновлення, навчилися, як працювати за європейськими правилами і просто і легко перейшли до цих правил після вступу України в Європейський Союз.
We also asked Sergei Nikolaichuk, Deputy Head of National Bank of Ukraine, to comment the topic from the financial point of view. So here is his message.
The Ukrainian government, experts and international partners are already actively discussing post-war development of the country, despite the fact that the war is still going on and the losses for the Ukrainian economy are growing every day, as well as for the world economy. The war affected the country in multitude ways, including a fall in economic activity, human deaths, migration abroad and internally, damages to physical infrastructure, bottlenecks in export logistics, etc. The estimates for only damage done to Ukraine's civilian infrastructure and other objects have already exceeded $100 billion. Economic losses should be added also in terms of unrealized growth potential, refugees compensation, and abandoned investment projects. Based on the World Bank methodology, Ministry of Economy and Kyiv School of Economics assess the overall losses of Ukrainian economy from the war at the level from $500 to $600 billion. However, the war is still going on and the full losses are yet to estimate. Therefore, it is very important for Ukraine to continue receiving international support in order to ease the adjustment of economy to war conditions, strengthens its ability to combat military aggression, and achieve a victory as soon as possible. That will retain the losses for the global economy and the financial needs for post-war reconstruction of Ukrainian economy. We feel significant support from the world. After all, today, Ukraine defends not only its integrity and independence, but also the values for entire civilized world. To date, the financial assistance received from international partners since the beginning of war is about $5 billion. Definitely, humanitarian and military aid should be added to these amounts. Our partners promise to provide even greater amounts to Ukraine in the form of grants and loans in the coming months. The National Bank of Ukraine, together with government continues to work actively to attract emergency external financing. After the war, the task of restoring the Ukraine's economy has several important aspects. First, the key to Ukrainian rapid recovery is structural reforms and integration into European Union. Second, Ukraine should manage the reconstruction primarily on its own. Ukraine has to utilize the available resources most effectively and consistently with Ukrainian interests. At present, the Council for Economic Recovery has begun its work, and I hope that in coming months it will present to the public a specific master plan which should take into account the priorities of state reconstruction in the post-war period. Meanwhile, our international partners should play an important role in controlling and supervising the effectiveness of spending the funds collected for reconstruction, especially with their support. Actually, that's the crucial issue, how to finance the implementation of such a plan for economic reconstruction. We see potentially several sources here. The main of them are the following. First of all, I believe frozen Russian assets abroad should be used as reparations to compensate the damages and injuries inflicted during a war and to rebuild Ukraine. This might be an unprecedented decision, but we believe only a response like this will prevent similar military aggressions in the future around the world and also allow Ukraine to build defensive mechanisms to repel potential future attacks. Also, a long-term program with the IMF should be launched, and the aim of this program should be to ensure macrofinancial stability and to drive further structural reforms in the country needed for recovery and membership in EU. Also, development banks such as World Bank, EBRD, IIB, and etc. should play an important role in funding Ukrainian infrastructure projects. Also, access to the EU structural funds should be the important source, taking into account submission of the EU candidacy application. And last but not least, private investments. Definitely, such great reconstruction of the economy will create massive opportunities for private businesses, and probably the most brave will benefit the most. In a nutshell, I have every reason to hope that the world will continue to support Ukraine. As I might just repeat, today, Ukraine defends not only its freedom, but also the democratic values of the entire civilized world.
Post-war reconstruction has a lot of dimensions for sure, and we asked Valeria Ionan, Deputy Minister for Digital Transformation of Ukraine, to tell us about it from her perspective.
Before the war, the Ministry of Digital Transformation of Ukraine set the goal of creating the most convenient state in the world in terms of services. In 2 years, we achieved great results. We have introduced the world's first digital passports and DIA application, which are complete analogs of paper and plastic documents. We launched the fastest business registration in the world, digital COVID certificates, digital driver's license, paying taxes in a few clicks in the application, and other convenient services. After the war began, we shifted our working process by solving the ad hoc challenges. During the war, the ministry's team became a real fighting machine. Now we have such priorities. In DIA mobile application, which is used by 16 million of Ukrainians, we have launched a couple of new services. For example, assistance to the army, the opportunity to transfer funds to the army through the charity fund Come Back Alive. Then e-document. Citizens who do not have paper documents with them can show e-document at checkpoints or to the police. E-Vorok is a special chatbot with authorizations through DIA to provide the armed forces with information about Russian troops dislocation and enemy's equipment. Then updated e-support program in DIA mobile application, which is a program of state financial assistance to Ukrainians from settlements where active war actions are taking place. E-Bayraktar is an online game in which everyone can try themselves in the role of the operator of the legendary Bayraktar drone. It was made to encourage our people. Then one online application for damaged property, submission of notification by Ukrainians about damaged or destroyed property in the combat zone for further compensation. Another direction is digital blockade on Russia. Communication. This is about communication with technology companies around the world to leave the Russian market, close offices, and stop supporting services and products, impose sanctions. In general, more than 500 companies have withdrawn from Russia, and this figure is constantly growing. Starlink from Elon Musk. We provide Ukrainians, the army, and critical infrastructure facilities with Starlinks in order to be able to use high-speed internet in all conditions. Also, we work with mobile operators and providers to repair networks damaged by the occupiers. Another direction is IT army. Together with the IT community and companies, we are waging a cyber front of the war, blocking the work of state information resources of Russia. Ukraine's IT army already has more than 3,100 cyber specialists. Also, IT army collects information about murderers and looters from the Russian army. And it is very important to mention that this is a volunteer movement. Assistance to the army. Together with partners, we have created a crypto fund to help the army, as well as launched the first in Ukraine NFT Museum of War. Business support. We continue to provide free online consultations for entrepreneurs on the DIA business portal. We have added some new sections on the portal, like supporting business in times of war, helping Ukrainians in Poland, in the UK, and other countries. We are rebuilding the DIA Business Center in Bucha, which was destroyed during the occupation. Some DIA business centers function as volunteer centers for coordination of assistance, especially the centers in Ternopil and Uzhhorod, which help with relocation and restarting businesses. Also, we plan to open DIA business centers abroad for Ukrainians. We are going to continue our fight on the digital front line until Russian tanks leave Ukraine. And after the war, we will focus on rebuilding Ukraine on all fronts. The war changed the goals and priorities of the ministry. We have already written the concept of new digital path and organizational structure. We will definitely focus on the development of the new digital economy because technology is our future. We will continue to launch convenient services, destroy bureaucracy, cover the country with the internet, and help businesses.
You've been watching an episode of Ukrainian Flames, a special project by Ukraine Crisis Media Center, NGO Euro-Atlantic Course and Analytical Center of Ukrainian Catholic University. In description to this video, you can find the information about how personally you can help Ukraine against Russian aggression. Everything is gonna be Ukraine.